Hey, Daily Doses, this is Pastor Larry on a Monday, and we're going to take a brief look back at a concept from this weekend's message that I didn't really get to flesh out as much as I would have liked to. And that is there are indeed times where we have to not just take the Shimei principle of ignoring it, but we've got to deal with it. And I pointed out at the beginning of the message, David later on did deal with Shimei's curses. But the thing is, very few of us actually find ourselves in that abusive relationship where it's time to step up and say something. And there's so much that's been said about that, not being a victim and all kinds of things. So I intentionally chose not to really dive into that during this message. Because yes, if something is hurtful, if something is incredibly toxic and is going after you in real life, you need to say something and deal with it. And maybe even need to move out of that situation or go towards authority. We were talking about those things that are said about you when you're not in the room. We were talking about those things that might be printed or stated about you when you're not in the situation. That's where the Shimei principle comes. But as a whole, I think you'd agree with me. We live in a day and age where everybody takes everything personally. And I love this passage to add to it from 1 Peter chapter 2, where it says in verse 21, "To this we were called." This is our assignment from God, "because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps." So what did he do? Well, he committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. He lived that moral, obedient to the Father life. And this is how it fleshed out, what it looked like. When they hurled their insults at him, now let me remind you, when insults and blasphemies were hurled at Jesus, there was nothing in him where there was even the slightest seed of truth. This is the perfect, sinless Son of God. When you hurl insults or whatever it is to me, even when I go, well, that's a lie, that's an exaggeration. I have plenty of stuff in my life, and so do you, that's worthy of those insults and those things that are said. In Jesus' case, completely unworthy. But when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. And when he suffered, he did not make a threat. Instead, he entrusted himself to him, the Heavenly Father, who judges justly. That's what we are called to do. The things in front of us, right here and now, hey, we don't talk that way. We don't respond that way. I'm not going to put up with that going on. But for too many of us, we take that principle and we apply it in every relationship. And we won't forgive until somebody apologizes in the exact way we want them to apologize. They grovel, or there's magic words of "I'm sorry," or whatever it is. Aren't you glad that the Lord simply calls us to follow him and doesn't make us grovel for each and everything we did because he paid that price? Let's remember what we have said and done before we dwell on what others have said and done. You'll be really glad you did.